Good evening. Hopefully I'm live. Nick, hello. You're going to have to tell me if I'm live, if I've got audio. Always a constant struggle every time I start a live stream. My greatest fear, talking and no one can hear me. Toby, hi. How you doing, mate? You okay? Hopefully you can hear me as well, Toby, and I'm live and I'm chatting. Sounds good. Fantastic. Good stuff. Good. I forgot to do any kind of setup or promo for this live stream, so it might be a quiet night for us, chaps. We might not have too many folks join us this evening, because yes, and yeah, you can. Yeah, you got to push the button, Nick. Make sure you're pushing the button. Aztec, hello. Dan Brooks, good to have you. Welcome in. Yeah, this is so this it might just be the few of us having a little chat, which is all good. I was very eager to jump on and still do a live stream this week as part of my fortnightly live stream sessions. Obviously, I would like to talk about UK Games Expo and all of the fun that was had there. I've already made a video about it, so I won't drone on too much and repeat myself. But given that we've got a few chatters here who were actually there as well, maybe we could reflect and just chat about some of the coolest stuff that we collectively saw and some of the fun that was had. I thought that might be quite cool because it was enormous. The scale of it was absolutely amazing. Because obviously, having been first time last year, it was a bit overwhelming to pop in and sort of see the scale of it last year. I kind of thought I had in my head going in this time. I was like, okay, I know what I'm expecting. And then just the way in which it was laid out, this big U shape that kind of went through 4 separate halls and just had, it kind of never felt like it ended. It was almost this figure 8 where you sort of get to one end and you sort of continue again. It was all on the same level this year as opposed to having going up and down stairs like you did last year. That kind of had this strange psychological effect where it did just feel like it kept going. And there was so much space. And then looking at the open play areas, this was the first time I'd popped over to the Hilton to see all the sort of RPG areas. The scale of that was massive as well. It's just enormous. Yeah, I mean, I've not historically gone to lots of conventions. Last year, because I was doing the channel, I thought, okay, let's correct that. Let's correct that oversight, and I will start going to a lot more conventions and events. So last year I went to a fair few, and this year I dropped it back down. UK Games Expo was one of the ones that I was certain I wanted to go to again, and I'm really glad I did, because it's fantastic. It's such a central kind of point in the hobby, and although obviously there's not really a big Warhammer presence, there's still a lot of overlap with a lot of like Games Workshop related stuff. And especially things in my sort of old Hammer wheelhouse. There's plenty to see and do. So yeah, really big fan. I'm already looking forward to next year. I'm already thinking about planning next year's event and just getting ready for it because it was brilliant. Yeah, it was brilliant. I tell you what, the conventions that I have been to a fair few of was Thought Bubble. I don't know if anybody in the chat has been to Thought Bubble, the comic and art convention. Takes place in Leeds. A really good convention. Lots of really fun stuff there. Lots of great artists have been present there over the years. So I've enjoyed that a lot. But that's kind of that's my biggest convention sort of experience, with the exception, of course, of Games Day back in the day, back in the 90s, where that was great. But yeah, I mean I think it was the National Indoor Arena in Birmingham, which was still big, and it still felt very big, especially because I was very small at the time. But yeah, I imagine it would be dwarfed by what we see at the NEC for UK Games Expo now. Sculpt Dude, hello, welcome in. Would be great if you could make it all the way to Adepticon next year. Yes, I mean, that would be really fun. I'd love to go to Adepticon at some point. I hear it's an incredible event. Martha has obviously got thoughts about Adepticon and UK Games Expo. I tell you what, if it was possible to like get one of those little, if Martha enjoyed being in one of those little bubble backpacks, then I would absolutely take Martha along to an event. But she doesn't really enjoy them, so that's a shame. Maybe if we get, maybe we'll get one of those sort of cat prams one year and see if she goes for that. But yes, Adepticon I think would be really fun. I mean, the scale of it seems quite immense. Essen obviously also would have been fun to attend. I think that's still coming up for this year, right? But yeah, I've never been to an Essen spiel, so that would be really good. Nick, you've actually got friends who exhibit Thought Bubble. That's fun. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, there's lots of folks. I mean, the reason I sort of stopped going eventually was because almost the turnover and the sort of new folks who were coming in, it seemed very similar year on year. So when I'd been for 5 years in a row, kind of didn't feel like there was enough sort of change. But I'm sure it's been a couple of years now, so I'm sure if I went back, it would probably have loads of new and interesting artists that I sort of hadn't seen before. So that would be quite fun. One thing I did do, I don't think I've got it to hand actually, but it was a fun idea that I had at Thought Bubble, I think, which was I took a sketchbook with me, a blank sketchbook, and I would go to artists who I really liked, who I knew before, or who I'd just seen at Thought Bubble and thought, wow, that's cool art. And I would just ask if they did sketches, and I would, obviously pay for sketches and commissions if they did those, and I would get them to do their favourite X-Men character. So it's this sketchbook of just totally random X-Men in all different styles from some amazing artists. Some of my favourite artists, I've been very lucky to see some of my favourite artists, like Babs Tarr, one of my absolute favourite artists. So she did an Emma Frost for me in the sketchbook. So there's lots of really cool stuff in there. Very, very pleased. I should really take a photo or scan some of that and share that online at some point, because yeah, those collected up over a number of years and they're really, really nice sketches. Every artist did a fantastic job. Wow, Nick, you went to the Games Days back in the Royal Horticultural Hall in London. That's stretching back a little bit. And yes, it was. I am sorry. It is sad that we didn't catch up at UK Games Expo, especially after last year where we stumbled upon each other multiple times. I guess that's just how strange it is with the scale of it, and just how you can absolutely just completely miss. There were loads of people who just I'd been on the lookout for throughout the weekend, and it was only on the Sunday afternoon when I just got so lucky as to just bump into them. And yet there's other people who you just bump into 3 or 4 times over the course of the event. It's so strange. Your sort of walking cycle around the map is the same sort of thing. So very, very strange. Thought at least one person stopped and checked twice, and I had to say no, no, I'm not Jordan. Aztec, Essen is usually October, right? Okay, that makes sense. So you never know. If I were to get sponsored by some company to go over to Germany, go to Essen, I'd do it. I'd do it if someone wanted me to make convention videos and stuff like that. I imagine if Birmingham is anything to go by, I imagine every single hotel is fully booked in the surrounding area. But yeah, I bet it would be fun. I've never been to any game show before, but I found that you guys going to them saves me from needing to go. I'm going camping in Wiltshire at the end of this week. Damn, that's fair enough. Yeah, I think there's a big investment. I think you've got a lot of time in actually travel time, the show itself, travel back. So it's a huge amount of just time investment, and then it is, and I admit I don't do a lot other than sit here and read and record stuff, so I'm not doing the most exercise generally, but it's a huge, it's physically quite demanding. I think part of it, as well as walking around this huge space at the convention hall, you're on alert the whole time, in a good way, but you're on alert the entire time because you're on the lookout for stuff. You're like, okay, what's that I can see right now that I want to know more about? So you're looking over here, you're constantly scanning every environment, you're looking for people that you're looking for people you want to talk to, you're looking for games you want to see, things that you might want to buy. So you're sort of on full alert for the entire day for 3 days. So there's like it's. I mean, I don't want to. You can't compare it to any sort of like major physical or mental endeavor, but it does take a toll. It's a big investment. Spend the entire week after just recovering. This weekend, I had big plans. I had big plans to be super productive this weekend. So I was gonna do loads and loads of stuff. Got loads of writing that still needs to be done. Lots of things that need to be sort of finished off or gotten to a certain place to ready for when they're needed. Oh boy, it has not been a productive weekend. This week just gone hasn't been the most productive either. But I thought I could salvage it with these last couple of days. I really haven't. I've really not. I have. If nothing else, I've done a lot of reading and a bit of like movie watching this weekend, which is not without merit. I do like reviews for books on my Patreon. I do the GW Film Club and the GW Book Club and stuff like that. So that's still like quasi productive work. So it's sort of achieved some stuff, but yeah, very much still in recovery mode. I think this coming week I need to get really back into the swing of things. But yeah, it's so on that front, damn, you're saving yourself that stress and that challenge. I'm glad that we can bring some like amount of the excitement and the sort of fun to folks who can't make it, because it is it's a privilege to be in a position to spend that time and to sort of be able to do it. So I fully accept that. So being able to share it a little bit is very pleasing as well. But yeah, if you can't make it, I'm glad there's at least a way to get a window into some of the cool stuff. And it all ends up, everything ends up getting out there eventually, whether it's products or conversations or that sort of stuff. Adam, I missed everyone at UK Games Expo unless they were doing a show. Oh, I'm sorry, mate. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I mean it's there's just so many people, isn't it? And you can just be on the lookout the whole time and still miss everybody. Nick, UKGE was a bit much for the avenues being wider this year. Was appreciated for sure. Yeah, I mean I think the number of people who were there is really interesting actually, because I think last year there were a lot of like crushes and bottlenecks. Just walking around, it constantly felt, or not constantly, but regularly felt like you were on top of other people. Really, really tight, and there just wasn't the opportunity to sort of move as much and see as much, in a way. This year they widened the aisles because they had more space. It never felt that way this year. So I think that's a big win. A really good idea. So by doing that, it gave the whole place this much more breathing room. And even the busiest sort of areas, there was maybe once that I wasn't able to get down an alleyway, an aisle that I wanted to go down, but the rest of the time it was so much easier to sort of travel around and get places. So very pleased about that. Very nice. Aztec, Berlin Breitspiel Con is late July, August. I'm not familiar with that one actually. Brettspiel, I mean, is that similar to Essen? What's the sort of what's the skew on that one? Does that cover board games primarily, or is that covering RPGs, war games? What kind of stuff do they cover there? When I was doing my undergraduate degree, I could legitimately count watching movies as productive. Oh, did you do a film course, Adam? I did something similar. I did time-based media at university, which was, I think in my mind, I thought was going to be watching movies and sort of breaking down the coolest things in the coolest movies and then turning that into, then like producing stuff yourself. It was very much sort of art movies and shorts based, understandably, because there's no budget to do big productions. So yeah, very different expectations to the reality of what I thought I was going to be doing at university. Still enjoyed myself for the most part, yeah. Oh, you did animation and production, that's fun. We did one animation module, which I was, well, no, we did two actually, but I was very lazy in one of them and didn't really do it. We did 3D animation with like physical like clay puppet. And then I also tried to do like a Captain Pugwash style 2D animation, you know, where everything's on pins, all of the different articulations, so that you could have stuff moving. And it was a fortress under attack from a flying ship, and a load of beast sort of harpy men jumped out of the flying ship and flew in to attack the fortress. So I did like rotoscoping of scenes from House of Flying Daggers. I got all my friends to record voice lines. I called the beasties Ungors. One of my friends who worked at Games Workshop at the time in the local store thought that was a very amusing reference. I wish I still had that animation. I think it was probably pretty bad. But it was fun to make that kind of thing. Next conferences for me are Strange Games Festival, followed by PeachyCon. Oh, Nick, that's great. So tell me about Strange Games Festival. I've not heard of that. And PeachyCon, yes, I look forward to hearing more about PeachyCon. I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend this year, but last year was terrific fun. And if it is possible, then I'd love to pop over, because yeah, I think Peachy does some wonderful stuff. Oh, damn right, yes. I mean, I'm sure. I think that actually one of the great things, especially with the increased avenue width, was that there was, I think, a lot more accessibility. So I can imagine it would be difficult, and there would be sort of, you know, some challenges to it for sure. But I did notice that there were quite a few folks on the sort of, I'm not sure what you'd call them, the sort of carts, you know, the automated wheelchairs. There were, because they had a load of those on like availability, or I don't know if you have to rent them or how that works, but it did seem really like they put a lot of thought into the accessibility, which I think is great. Toby, if you're talking about my terrible animation, yeah, I don't know that it would be cool to watch. I still have a couple of the short films I made at university. I have occasionally considered, would that be fun to share these terrible short films on my YouTube channel? But I think the self-indulgence would be just off the charts, and it would also be very, very embarrassing. I think everybody would be embarrassed. Or, you know, you guys would all be embarrassed for me. I'd be embarrassed for me. You know, it wouldn't be good. Aztec. So it's a smaller scale than Essen, focused board games and card games, some RPGs, a few miniature games. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so I've not heard of that Berlin Con then, but that sounds quite interesting. Yeah. And July, August. Yeah, I mean that's when Bring Out Your Lead is held, roughly, I think, which is the Old Hammer event that takes place in Newark. So this is historically been held at the Foundry, the Wargames Foundry, and it's an opportunity to sort of get together and literally bring out your lead, bring out your old miniatures, and play a load of like proper Old Hammer stuff. So if you want to play Rogue Trader, 1st, 2nd, 3rd edition Warhammer Fantasy, anything from around that kind of period, I've still never been to Bring Out Your Lead, which again is one of these massive oversights. I keep on going back and forth on whether or not I'll be able to attend. I'd love to attend this year, but yeah, something that it's not always possible. So the logistics don't work out. My birthday is around that time as well, and it does conflict with like family plans and stuff like that. So yeah, but I think you never know. I might make it to Bring Out Your Lead one year. I'd like to. I think that would be really fun. I'd like to. Nick, share it. You don't know. You do not know what you wish. You do not know. Toby, did you have a good con overall? Was it worthwhile? Obviously, there's a lot of folks on the move and wandering about. Yeah, I'd love to know, like, you know, and obviously you don't have to share anything that you're not comfortable sharing, but from a vendor perspective, I'd be interested to know if it was successful this year compared to last. Damn. Don't worry about it. I'm going to see lots of live music, and I really don't like the idea of riding around in a remote control car. Fair enough. I walk a little bit, but still, an event is miles away from London. I don't drive. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely fair enough, mate. Ill villainy, nothing like a bit of secondhand embarrassment. Oh boy, it would be off the charts for real. Martha would be embarrassed for me. That's how embarrassing it would be, and they're shameless. These cats. Adam, bring out your lead. Sounds interesting. I would have to go digging for my old miniatures. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like display boards and things like that. Encouraged to bring your stuff. You can book into lots of different games ahead of time as well. I know there's going to be some cool. I think there's some Dark Future stuff potentially this year. I can't remember if Lewis from the Old Hammer Fiction podcast was doing some Dark Future this year. He did some Rogue Trader last year. Oh no, he's doing a Siege of Prague, I think, for 3rd edition maybe of Warhammer Fantasy. But yeah, there's lots of different classic games going on, so it does seem like it's got quite a lot of fun stuff. Alec, there are a few Warhammer Fantasy Battle 3rd edition games being played at Boyle I would like to take part in. Very difficult for me to get to, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the challenge. It's quite a way. If you don't live local to Nottingham, it can be quite difficult to get to. Ill, happy birthday. Yeah, I mean, absolutely mention it. Happy birthday. I hope you had a good one. I'm glad to hear that, Toby, as well. Great networking. Up 30% on sales. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's really, really good. Oh, good work, Nick. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, so the expo, just from it's really interesting. So, because obviously went as a content creator, I touched on this in the video. The networking aspect of it is enormous. It's such a huge part for like what I'm trying to do, and I didn't know whether or not it would be interesting to folks to sort of dwell on, but it's very different as going as sort of a traditional punter. I think it's also different going as the sort of traditional press. Now, obviously, I was also vlogging in a sense, so I was recording stuff and all that kind of thing. But it's such a good opportunity. You've got so many folks from the industry who are present, and that is both like from a design perspective, lots of people who are creating new games that I might be interesting to, that I might want to cover on the channel, that might be really good to cover on live streams or what have you. So there's lots of people that you want to talk to from that perspective. And then there's also, obviously, wanting to, because I'm doing a little bit more on the writing side from a games perspective at the moment and sort of getting into that kind of space. So there's, you want to have those kinds of conversations as well, but you don't want to come across as being a bit too sort of forceful in any of that. And then there's also interviewees that I'm interested in chatting to, so trying to get hold of folks who might be interested in having a conversation and sort of doing something like that, who might be able to shed a bit of light onto the history of Games Workshop or other games and other sort of tabletop stuff that's related or crosses over. And then you've also got the punter aspect as well, so you're wandering around and you're wanting to see what's cool and sort of get a bit of a read on what's the most interesting stuff that I might want to play or get into in the future. So there's quite a lot on your mind as you're wandering about. And then also, of course, if you see a proper retro bin of miniatures, you're going to want to jump in like you're Scrooge McDuck, swimming through lead minis, basically, and sort of getting into the danger of that. But it was really fun and lot of opportunity to speak to some really, really fun folks. There's a few interviews that hopefully will come from it, which I think will be really interesting. There's also, I had an opportunity to play some games. I mean, I think I mentioned it in the video I did, but this game, don't play this game. Don't play it. Whatever you do, this really caught my imagination. I was really excited when I saw this. So the whole like conceit of the game is that you're cursed when you pick it up, and you have to play through this solo journaling RPG, and you're encountering the kind of stuff you would see in found footage horror movies. So obviously, the fact that you've got 7 days to play it when you pick it up because of the curse, that kind of speaks to Sadako and the Ring. So there's like a real kind of like horror, like a J-horror vibe. I absolutely love Japanese horror films and a lot of the sort of classic J horror. So I'm really looking forward to playing this and sort of skewing in that direction. I think I've mentioned in the video, I quite like the idea of maybe playing through some of this. Maybe not the whole thing, but playing through some on a live stream and just getting into it and just, making my way through this horrific J horror found footage nightmare and bringing people along for the ride. I think that could be quite good fun. I toyed with the idea a while back with Captain's Log, the Star Trek solo role-playing game, and I never got round to actually organising it to do it. But I do think it's fun. I mean, on the sort of on the kind of solo and the kind of game book kind of space, I'm actually going to be doing a couple of live streams in the not too distant future, as in this month probably, that will be with some game book authors taking a look at their latest books and sort of playing through the start of them. So one is Anthony Johnston's Can You Solve the Murder? So Anthony's going to be joining me on a live stream on, let me double check, the 22nd. And we're going to play through the start of his book. And this is really interesting because this is kind of like cozy crime, but it's a cozy crime game book. So like the Thursday Murder Club and all of that kind of stuff that's been really popular of late. Taking that kind of, you all live, or you've gone to some stately home and there has been a murder and now you're going to solve it like you're Miss Marple, but it's a game book. So I'm quite excited about this. I'm really looking forward to that. So we're going to be playing that, the start of it, together, Anthony and I, and I'm going to make the choices. He's going to read us through some of the segments on the 22nd. So in a fortnight, we're going to be playing through some of that, which I think will be really, really fun. And then I'm also hoping to have another game book author who I've had on the channel before. So John Green, who has written some of the Arkham Horror game books, they've got a new one coming out. We're not certain it's going to happen. It's not guaranteed. But the hope is that we'll be able to get that organised sometime in June as well to coincide with the launch of that book. That will be really fun because we played the first one, or the start of the first one, and it was ace. So I'm very eager to do that again and sit down with John. John's the king of game books, so I think that would be really, really terrific. Speaking of the real king, the emperor of game books, Ian Livingston was at UK Games Expo, of course. Absolutely awesome. He's so personable and charismatic, and it's really, really lovely. But he's also one of the few people in the world who's like I'm quite starstruck, which is just like when you get to chat to someone who's had such an influence on, like indirectly, but such an influence on your life through the work that he did, whether that's Games Workshop, whether that's Fighting Fantasy, whether that's my school. So I went to the same school as Sir Ian Livingston. Obviously, many years between. But so the deputy headmaster was still friends with him, had a picture of him and Sir Ian Livingston together in his office. So if you were in trouble and you had to go and see the deputy head, there's a picture of Sir Ian Livingston right there. And like the computer science lab was donated by Sir Ian Livingston and named after him and stuff like that. So he's been this presence throughout my entire life, inadvertently, just pure coincidence. Absolutely fascinating to have tied up so much of that and to have had the opportunity to interview him and then to meet him a couple of times at UK Games Expo. I'm really very confident that I have stumbled over my words like a complete fanboy every time I've met him. So, but he's so nice as well. He's just lovely. So yeah, that's totally on me. But yeah, very very fun, very very cool. And yeah, there was also Mark Gascoigne was there as well, who is really lovely and is such a raconteur, such a great storyteller, absolutely fantastic. I was able to interview him last year, and he's so cool. He's just got so much interesting, fascinating history to share, and he shares it so well, and he's really generous with it as well. So all of that sort of thing, I absolutely love, and that seems to be something that's really UK Games Expo specific. I think Dragonmeet has a bit of that, but yeah, there's so many famous folks find their way to UK Games Expo, and then you get to have these little chats, and it just is really, really nice to sort of consolidate that relationship. Having spoken to them, I mean, they probably don't remember who I am most of the time, but there's just, it's great. It's really cool. Adam, starstruck is exactly how I felt when I met Ian Livingston and Steve Jackson. Yeah, I'm not surprised, man. It's great. Where is the Pie in the Sky game book? That should exist. Do you mean is this the one, the old show, BBC show, where he was a chef or he was a retired policeman who just wanted to be a chef at a local pub, but he kept on getting dragged back into the force because the crimes kept carrying on. Well, I forget the name of the actor, but he obviously was in the Harry Potters, I believe. If that's the same one we're thinking of. Nick, wondering if Jordan has any networked contacts impacted by Unbound falling over. Sadly, I do. Yeah, I do know a couple of folks who have been affected by that. It's very rough, very, very rough. Yeah, I mean, it's a sorry state of affairs and a bit of a Mickey take, it looks to me, by what has subsequently happened afterwards with the creation of Boundless and how that's sort of moving forward. Yeah, I'm not keen on that at all. It's a very poor show, I think, and a real shame because that was a good platform to get new books created and out there. So yeah, very sad. Richard Griffith, yes, quite right, Nick. Yeah, that's right. Oh, Nick, you want to know what Sir Ian's report from school was like? Yeah, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. He said himself, I think, that he didn't apply himself all that much. Am I misremembering? Am I thinking of myself there? I feel like in Dice Masters he might have said that he didn't, that he wasn't the most successful at school. But I can't. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I can't remember for sure now. I question it. Eastlyn, hello, welcome in. Come in and know me better. And Elf, hello, how are you doing? Good to have you both here. Yeah, Toby, the 2d6 dungeon stuff as well. I mean, we're hopefully going to get together and do some stuff with that in the future. I think that would be really fun if we can do something on a live stream with that down the line. I think that would be really, really fun. Yeah, maybe build a little dungeon together and play through some stuff. I think that could be really exciting. Yeah, I think the other stuff. So I also got to play and was given a copy of Cosmolancer. I don't know if anyone's played this. So this is Renia Knizia. It's like I think I can't remember what the original was called. Maybe Conquest or something like that. Avalon Hill have sort of repackaged it as you're like a space explorer taking photos of space and stellar phenomena. Really, really interesting. So we got to actually play a demo of this. So I'm gonna see. Hopefully you can see this. So on the board, it's on the other side. On the board, it's kind of a grid, and then you placing down from the top tiles all of these different stellar phenomena, and the more extravagant and rare they are, the more points they're worth if you're able to get photographs of it. So you have to sort of time your photographs at the right moment, and then you score across the entire row and the entire column on the grid. So it's kind of like Scrabble in a way, but you're sort of choosing where you're taking photos, and then that gives you access to all of the points. But then there's a couple of tokens that can be placed that will negatively affect other players if they're taking a photo of that same thing. So you can kind of create these little traps and interact with each other. Absolutely terrific. Really, really good fun. Very quick, very easy to learn, but there's a lot of a lot of gameplay in it that was really, really fun. So we got to play this, and then the very lovely chaps at Avalon Hill. So we met Doug, who actually has designed a lot of the new Hero Quest and Talisman stuff. So Doug actually ran the demo for us. So that was awesome. But he also gave me a copy of Hero Quest First Light, which is very cool. Getting a reflection everywhere. So Hero Quest First Light, which is like a new demo, like not a demo, but like a new intro version of Hero Quest. So apparently it's got lots of standees. So you move to a much smaller sort of footprint in terms of the board, I think, and it's got fewer. It's got fewer miniatures. You've still got the heroes, and you have the dragon instead of the gargoyle. But yes, it has standees to make it a little bit lighter. It's got 10 new quests. So yeah, very, very cool. So I'm very excited to give that a go. You can also use an app to play as Morcar or Zargon. So I think that's really fun. So I'm excited about that. I'm very tempted to do a little video about it at some point, because I've been doing some work lately with Stephen Baker. So the creator of Hero Quest and Space Crusade and Battle Masters and loads of other stuff. We've been working on a little project which I'm very, very excited about. It's not Hero Quest related. We are going to be doing an interview, so that's going to be up soon. Like a full interview where we sort of retrospective looks at Stephen's career and the creation of those amazing games. But then we're working on a project for his latest game as well, which I'm really excited to be working on. But I might do a little Hero Quest video as well to sort of celebrate this new version of it and sort of take a look at it. Yeah, so there's things to take a look at there as well. And then Talisman 5th edition. So very fun. Love a bit of Talisman. Great stuff. I typically play the 3rd edition of Talisman because I love its completely absurd, colourful Warhammer madness, if you like. But yeah, 5th edition, I'm eager to see how they've sort of updated a lot of stuff. I've seen it from afar, and obviously every edition of Talisman is pretty much the same, but I think there's a few things that have been done to make this more accessible and a bit easier to play, and sort of bring families in a bit more again. And then I think there's also changes. Well, I know there's a lot of changes to the world and the sort of backstory, the lore, which is quite interesting. I've been reading a little bit about some of that stuff, and it seems quite cool. So yeah, exciting stuff. So there's a question. Tokens over standees, over minis. Where do we all stand? Good question, Nick. So for board games, I'm always in two minds when it comes to minis versus standees versus tokens, because I think, so I love miniatures, right? I mean, obviously I have countless miniatures. You can't see them, but there's countless miniatures. Absolutely ridiculous. But then there's a load of board games that I've bought that I really love that don't necessarily need miniatures but have them. I mean, I think Simon is a bit guilty of this. So I've got Rising Sun, which I think is an incredible game. It's basically a reworking of Chaos in the Old World. That's got loads of miniatures in it. Could most of the miniatures in that be tokens? Probably. And because they're all miniatures, the boxes are massive. I've also got the Occo, the second version of the Occo game. I really genuinely loved the first version of Occo. I don't know if anybody will remember this, but it's beautiful art from a comic book by an artist called Hub. It's kind of like a mythic Japan. Incredible art. That had standees and was awesome. Then they redid it, sort of rewrote the rules and did a new version of it, did it on Kickstarter. I think it was Red Joker who did it, and it has an enormous number of miniatures. So the boxes are just huge because there's so many minis in it. And whilst I love a nice miniature, I also love efficient storage. so if it's not, and it's probably double standards here, because Citadel miniatures mean a lot to me, so I will always take Citadel miniatures in a game. But for other miniatures, other board game miniatures, I'm oftentimes quite happy with tokens or standees. I mean, I think standees and tokens, I'd be mixed based on the game. Sometimes I think a token's better, sometimes I think a standee's better. But yeah, I think as I have accumulated more games and more miniatures, I find myself a little bit more on the side of I probably don't need loads of minis in a board game. But yeah, that's probably just me, and that probably comes from a place of, privilege of having enough miniatures already. Yeah, so but I'm interested in what other folks think, because it's a great question. Damn the enjoyment of HeroQuest dice. And Steve, re-release Space Crusade. Oh, hello, Steve. Sorry, I didn't even see you pop in. Good to have you here, mate. And damn, yeah, it's in Dice Men where Surian Livingston mentions that he didn't apply himself that much at school. Thank you for confirming that. That's great. Adam, I prefer miniatures, but I don't mind tokens and standees. They make things cheaper after all. Yeah, I mean, that's also a very good point. They tend to be cheaper. Nick, for me, the closing the loop feature of having a standee makes things quickly playable, whereas minis make things more visual. And I guess if line of sight is not relevant, then why a mini? Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I think sometimes miniatures are just nice to have and can look great. But yeah, I don't know. I'm probably a hypocrite on this because I'm sure there'll be games where I'll be playing it and I'll be like, oh, I wish this was an awesome mini. When I'm playing it, I probably want the minis. When I'm storing it, I probably want the tokens. Alf, Oko comic is great. Good artwork. Totally agree. Yeah, I absolutely love the artwork and the world. It's not the most unique. He's kind of similar to Legend of the Five Rings in a lot of ways, I think, but with a very particular visual style. And I really like things like the Yakuza that were in it, and the look and the feel of Oko's world. Really, really big fan. Yeah, I enjoyed that comic a lot. A lot of troubles getting that in English because it was first published in French. To the extent that I do have the omnibus that they released, because they didn't release the final volume individually, I don't think, but I ended up having to get the French ones in order to read it in a timely fashion. In fact, I have here the art book of Oko. It's one of my top shelf books here, so you can see this. Folks can see it. I think that the art of this book absolutely beautiful. Really, really lovely. There's also an idea in Oko, the comic book, that I wish was explored elsewhere because I think it's so very, very cool. And that is something called Exo Bunraku. So Bunraku, I believe, is a type of puppet in Japan, in Japanese. And the Exo Bunraku in Oko's world are essentially dreadnoughts. So if you think about a 40k Space Marine dreadnought, it is that, but a samurai version of that. And a guy sits in the middle, in the chest compartment, and there's a bit of magic and a bit of technology, and he's kind of puppeteering this huge samurai dreadnought from inside. And it's obviously high fantasy nonsense, but it's really fantastic. They're just it's such a great. Yes, Nick, a shadow puppet Bunraku. So it's something along those lines. It's a puppet or a marionette of some kind. So yeah, the idea of the Exo Bunrakus is basically exosuits, but they are like puppeteered from inside. I can't find a good picture here, unfortunately. But they're such a cool idea. Basically a way of doing fantasy dreadnoughts. It's kind of like Steamjacks in War Machine. It's like another way of tackling that kind of giant robotic kind of suit of armor, but in a fantasy setting, and in this one they're very, very cool. Lonely depends on the board game. Meeples is fine, but Hero Quest wouldn't be the same experience at all. Standees I like less than either. Yeah, I mean, you're right about Hero Quest. I think like a huge part of Hero Quest always has been those original Citadel minis. The feel of those, absolutely brilliant, and that is part of what made it so timeless, I think. So I think you're right on that. I think you're right on that. Nick, you were saying my own thing that could just work with tokens, but minis look more visceral, e.g. Space Hulk could be played just as well with tokens, yet it looks lovely with minis. Yes. I see what you mean. Yeah, that absolutely is a fair shout. It's interesting, because obviously Games Workshop's move over the years to being so miniatures-led. Like, they've always made board games, more or less. And they got to a place where the board games are like extensions of the miniature war games. I think that is just an interesting story on its own, but that's also a key part of why those board games are much loved. Not all of them are board games, but you could argue Space Crusade is a board game, a miniatures board game, right? And Warhammer Quest, for instance. But they're also so inherently miniatures games. Like, it's kind of interesting when you think about how they're categorized and people's relationship with them as a result of that. Because I don't think a lot of people would consider Space Hulk or Warhammer Quest to be board games when they were making a list of their favorite board games ever made, for example, or Blood Bowl. But I think there's a case to be made that they are, right? But the nature of the miniatures has sort of moved the perception and the feel of those games very far into something else. Yeah, interesting. Adam, the new L5R board game would be less interesting without the miniatures, though I'd back it regardless. Interesting. That's very interesting. So I am hoping, Adam, to cover the new L5R board game in some capacity. So this is, for anybody who's not familiar with this is Champions of Rokugan. So L5R, it's set in a place called Rokugan. That is a sort of medieval Japan, but with magic, and it's obviously inspired by medieval Japan. It's not actually, but in the same way that the old world is Europe, Rokugan is Japan, largely. There are 7 great clans who are all ostensibly united under a single emperor, but there's obviously politics and battles between those clans. And the clan wars is when it all spills out into, sort of moves from the political backroom kind of assassinations and political jockeying to all-out warfare. So, yes, and Nick, you're right. Legend of the Five Rings is what L5R stands for. Absolutely incredible storytelling. So there's been a couple of iterations of it. There was an original iteration of L5R that was driven by a card game that had public events where the winners of those events could then dictate what would happen in the storyline. So you would actually develop this incredible, like, player-led narrative across about the entire empire and how it's evolving and the battles it's facing and all that sort of stuff. That went for a number of years before being sold in its entirety. So there was a card game, there was a role-playing game, there was a Clan Wars miniatures game. All of it was sold to Fantasy Flight Games in around 2015. And then they spent a couple of years redeveloping it and rebooting it. The living card game that they launched was absolutely amazing, I think. And then they relaunched the role-playing game as well, which I also think is amazing. I think they created a version of the world that was super accessible, that was super inclusive, that was super interesting. And they also told this sweeping meta-narrative through free fiction and story events. Absolutely loved it. Incredible. That led up to the Clan Wars. I'm a huge fan. They are relaunching it again as a brand new story from the Clan Wars point. So this kind of overwrites the most recent version of that narrative, which I think is a shame because I think it was really good. But if this is a new breath of life into the L5R franchise, which has been stalled out for the last couple of years, that I do look forward to. So yeah, Champions of Rokugan is going to be this huge battle game, board game for the fate of Rokugan. So it kind of reminds me of Rising Sun or Chaos in the Old World or Forbidden Stars, if anybody played any of those games. So I'm quite excited about it, but I think it's going to be big in terms of physical, like the scale of the game. I think it's going to be a big investment. It's like, has anyone played Dune? The Dune board game? Let me know in the chat if you've played it. The classic one that was reissued a couple of years ago. That basically takes you a whole day. It was a Twilight Imperium kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's very... I think it's going to be one of those where you probably have to set aside a good day to play through it, because you're playing through this whole clan war and trying to conquer all of Rokugan. But it looks like it's going to be amazing, and that's why I kind of want to cover it. I just don't know how, given how the channel works, it's always difficult to sort of find topics that people would be interested in that are not going to be my sort of bread and butter old hammer stuff. So we'll see. And that was a good joke, Nick. I wasn't ignoring it. Yes, you do not need to have played the previous 4 rings to enjoy L5R. But yeah, very, very excited about it, basically. Lonely, I could be wrong, but I feel like some of the newer GW bot games have done token standee things. Lost Patrol, perhaps. Titus game. Definitely a cost thing. The Lost Patrol has miniatures, but I think you're right about maybe the Titus game, maybe like the what is it, Dark Tide? Maybe the Dark Tide game as well. Do you get miniatures for the heroes and then tokens or standees for everyone else, possibly? I'm not sure. And yes, Lonely, you're right. They for 5 rings, Privateer Press did do a mini crate for it, which I subscribed to the entire thing. So this was back when I had a traditional job, and so could make worse decisions with my money. And I subscribed to the entire run of the L5R mini crate. Beautiful miniatures, really, really nice. I've still got the whole set. I've got a complete set. They are, I think they're boxed at the moment. Absolutely love those miniatures. I think they're fantastic. I had visions of using them for an L5R role-playing game campaign at some point. Constantly had to email Privateer Press because they forgot to send me stuff. So I had to do that a lot. But it was a shame when that dropped off. But then I think it was at that point in time when they ended up cancelling, shortly before they ended up cancelling the LCG, which was related to global events. No one was running any organised play and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a shame when they cancelled that mini crate, because those miniatures were really nice. Nick, wasn't Twilight Imperium Rex the game that existed because they didn't get the June license? I think you are quite right. Yeah, I've heard that story myself. Yeah. So yeah, just getting back to UK Games Expo, which ostensibly I was going to talk about. I had a great time. I think it was really successful by my metrics. Some of those metrics are professional. Some of those are personal. From a personal point, it was just great to sort of be amongst the hobby, a sort of tangible, physical version of the hobby. It's what kind of the thing you used to get from Warhammer Fest or Games Day. Seeing so many people who love the same kind of things that you love, and just you're all there to just immerse yourselves in it and relish in it and share it, is so heartening. And what's the best way to put it? I don't know. It kind of fills you with this kind of just this love for the hobby, the tabletop gaming hobby. And then seeing stuff gets you excited about it. It gets you excited to tell stories. You want to rush home and plan stuff for campaigns and for games that are coming out. And then just, I said in the video that I made, seeing folks like yourselves who are, part of this community and enjoy the channel and sort of enjoy the work. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's really, really good. So I personally, you obviously can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it was a huge win and just really, really good fun. So yeah, I'm very glad that I invested the time and the effort and did it. And like I say, very excited for next year. Like already planning next year. I'd love to be in a position one day to be able to go to multiple cons and do multiple things like that. Like I said, I did last year go to a load of the UK-based ones. It would be awesome to be in a position one day to go to multiple cons around the world and sort of see how different people do it. For now, and Pineapple, to your question, I don't think I will be going to Essen or other sort of countries' cons at the moment. I just don't think I could afford to do it, whether that's from time or cost. It sort of wouldn't balance out right now. But maybe one day, if we can get there, then I think that would be ace. Yeah, it'd be really, really fun. Lonely. They were doing 3 mini crates, one for L5R, one for one of their own games, and another one for Robert E. Howard. All lovely models, but the money will only stretch so far. I don't remember that. Now that you mention it, I remember they did. I think they did a sci-fi one, didn't they? I forgot about the Robert E. Howard one. I think that must have started quite late in the L5R one's life. Yeah, I mean obviously that's a big investment to be following all of those great models across the board. They claimed that they destroyed the molds as soon as they'd sent them all out, which is a wild business model. I guess pure FOMO, because you could have just created a range of L5R models. I don't know why you'd have to destroy them. Very strange. Stuff. Did you get much of a sense there or from other interactions how well Old World is doing? I wish GW would publish their sales figures. It's a very good question. At UK Games Expo, I would not say I got a sense of anything about the Old World war game. You hear... It's very difficult because I'm so immersed in it. Like a lot of my time online is spent watching videos about the Old World or researching the Old World or checking out Reddit threads or discussion boards about the Old World. So for me, it's like everybody's talking about it all the time. And I'm thinking about it a lot. So like, yeah, it's kind of, it seems to me like it's just really successful and everyone's loving it and having a great time with it. But then from a sales perspective, I've got no idea. I mean, when I look over and see how like the Square based channel does, that's like getting really good numbers on their podcasts and their sort of their rules-led discussions of the Old World. And I know that those guys run a lot of tournaments and organized play. That seems to be well attended. So like, I'm sure they will have some sense from a competitive perspective how well the sort of market is growing. Is there a market for content about the Old World? Is there a market for competitive gaming in the Old World? So that's, you get one slice of the success pie, I suppose, from looking at that kind of stuff. When you look more broadly, very difficult to know from sales, right? Because, as you say, Games Workshop don't release their sales figures. A lot of stuff sells out when it launches, as most Games Workshop stuff does, but it's reassuring, I think, to see that a lot of Old World stuff does sell out as well. I think the Tutagen Guard have been out of stock for, like, since they came out, because that's something I want, because I have a unit of those and I wanted to supplement that unit. So yeah, it's the stock obviously shifts on new releases at the very least for the Old World. I don't know that the Wood Elves sold quite as well, just from looking at the numbers of sold out stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, isn't it? I think when you look at the content space, there's clearly a market. Like there is an interest in the Old World. So I've had videos that have gotten 11,000, 12,000 views, which is very good for my channel, where I've talked specifically about the Old World, which says to me that there's a market there. I think some of the Square-based stuff might get 20k. I don't know if those numbers are accurate, but that kind of says that there's a content market at the very least. So yeah, I don't know if you can translate any of that into sales, but it feels like there's a good bit of momentum to it. And as Toby says, there is the old world RPG on the way, which is very, like, really super exciting. Seeing it in the flesh, as it were, at the at UK Games Expo, at the Cubicle 7 booth, absolutely incredible. Like seeing the big, you know, they had these big illuminated like walls with the art up. It just, like, it's cool. It's like, this is real. This is happening. The old world RPG is coming, and that's very fun as a fan. Very fun to see and very exciting. You know, I'm looking forward to playing a load of this. And like, they were doing demos. They didn't, the physical books I don't think exist yet. But yeah, there was a lot there that was really, really cool to see. So that's exciting. And as I mentioned in the video, I've actually had the opportunity to do a little bit of writing for the old world RPG. And that, from a professional perspective, sort of seeing the thing becoming reality, absolutely amazing. Just like, this is cool. So I'm very excited, very excited about the old world RPG coming out. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fun. Everything I've seen so far, I really like, and I think that the angle of the game, I mean, you can see on the Cubicle 7 website where they talk about like what's the sort of setting and how are things being sort of explored. And Dominic McDowell, the CEO of Cubicle 7, has done some video sort of stuff about the game and the setting and the systems. All of that, really, really fun. I think it is definitely going to be, like, I think Cubicle 7 has sat down and spent a lot of time looking at the old world and saying, right, how do we make a game that is relevant but is distinct from Woofrup, that shares, you know, they're stable mates, and that's obviously going to be the case. It's always going to be the case. But how do you create separate experiences for those two when you still want Woofrup to exist? You know, they've announced a load of Woofrup products that are on the way, and I believe there's other stuff still being worked on. So it's not like Woofrup is going anywhere, but you don't want to cannibalize your own market, but you also want to create something new that takes the opportunity of the old world and gets people in. I think that's really, really fun. I mean, you know, Elf, you're asking the question, what's the difference between the old world RPG and Warhammer Fantasy RPG? Obviously, they've got different systems. There's a much more streamlined and simpler, more accessible system in the old world because they want it to be a sort of easier on-ramp into the role-playing. And then you've got the 200-year gap in the timeline between Woofrup and the old world. So the idea is to create a very different feeling. You're in the same place, but it's a very different feeling to Woofrup Classic, if you like. You know, in the same way that you might look at, you know, I'm trying to think of another good example where you've got, I think if you looked at Deadlands, right? I mean, maybe this is not a good example, but it's the first one that's come to mind. But they did Deadlands, and then they did Deadlands, which is Weird West, so sort of cowboys. They then did the Hell on Earth, I think it was, which was like the sort of sci-fi version set on the same world. So it still had all of the flavour of Deadlands, but it was a different setting in the same world. And I think that is the kind of thing they're going for here. If you're 200 or 300 years before Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and the Empire is in a very different state, the Empire being the backdrop to most Woofrup campaigns means that now we're going to have a very different feel to where your campaign is probably going to take place. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of explore things in a different way. So yeah, I'm very excited. Very, very excited to talk about it more. I don't want to get too deep into it until it comes out because I don't want to sort of step on anyone's toes or anything. But yeah, I think it's going to be really, really fun. And yes, you know, Sword, I think I would I make a video about my experience? Potentially. So I've had a very, very small role in it. You know, there's loads of people who have done loads and loads of work on it. So I wouldn't want to sort of self-aggrandize and kind of take any credit that was not mine. but potentially just my little insight into it and the sort of small role that I have been privileged and very excited to play. Potentially. Yeah, I mean, it might be something I covered on a live stream, probably more than a video, maybe. But yeah, it could be something in that space. Jake, hello, come on in. Good to have you. Come and know me better, man. I've taken that from... I want to start using that more. Do you remember in the Muppets Christmas Carol where the ghost of Christmas Present says, "Come in and know me better, man"? And it's just the warmest, friendliest welcome I have ever heard. I love it. Every year I watch the Muppets Christmas Carol and I absolutely love it. And I kind of want to get to a place where it feels authentic and real, because I want it to be authentic and real. So I want to use it because it's so good. It's just so welcoming. So that's why I'm trying to say that, because I want that. I really genuinely would love that. I think that would be great. So Jake, yes, you've not seen it in a while, but you definitely should. And whilst you're here, come in and know me better. Nick, is the difference between Wolfrup and Oldhammer that the Skaven are educated and polite in Oldhammer? Educated and polite? Are you angling for something here? What is it that you mean on this one? I'm not following. There's definitely a difference in that the Skaven are not prevalent in the old world. So you probably won't see many Skaven, you probably won't see many vampires. You know, they obviously do exist in the Warhammer world of that era, but they're not major factors. So, and I think that poses, that creates an interesting opportunity when it comes to campaigns and adventures and stuff like that. Because some traditional bad guys, Chaos even, and the Chaos cults, they're not as prevalent. So, you're not going to be seeing as much of that in the old world. You're going to be seeing a sort of a different suite of villains, familiar villains, many, but you're also going to be sort of getting a slightly different, like what's being focused on is going to be different. That one guy, when is the 8th edition vid? It is going to be this year. That is my plan. Yes, I mean I am regretful that I haven't finished the full series of the making of Warhammer. I do want to make sure I get it done. I'll be honest, part of the challenge with it is that it's such a big topic. Those videos ended up becoming quite big, and in order to sit down and do it justice, it takes a huge amount of it's just literally time. And when you're doing it, you can't do anything else. So in order to block out, okay, it's going to take 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever to finish the research, write, edit, record, put together that video. Can't do anything else during that time. But obviously, I'm in a place where most weeks I need to have a video out. And that means that you'd be doing nothing else during that time. So that is why I ended up delaying it, was because it was like, okay, well, I can't find the time yet to sort of... I've not got far enough ahead in the production of other videos in order to block out the time to dedicate to that. Now, I'm still not far enough ahead. It's very... especially because the Building Warhammer Armies videos have grown as well. So I'm still not far enough ahead to do that. But I also am very conscious that it's been a long time and that I do need to finish that series. So I'm definitely going to get that done. I want a video on the 8th edition. I want a video on the End Times. And I obviously have talked before many times about my Storm of Chaos content plan. Now, this is also a huge investment of time, which I'm part way through. But I need to get back to... And again, it's the same thing. It's just okay, well, the investment of time is huge. And it's kind of well, why can't you be chipping away at that in the background? But then there's 50 other things to chip away at as well. So it's just it's a tough balance of trying to move it forward at the same time as trying to move everything else forward. And I've failed at that balance. But yes, I do intend to. Stuff. I suppose the time frame has never seemed too important to the sense of it being the Warhammer world. War of the Beard, First Chaos War, Drakenfels, Godric and Felix, different but the same. Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. And I think, the special characters that existed in 4th edition were from all over the shop. You had this progressive kind of narrative, arguably, through 2nd and 3rd edition. 4th edition kind of just went, right, well, here's the Warhammer world today, but here's also a load of historical characters who are dead, and you're going to be able to play with any of them. You can have Karl Franz fighting against someone who died 400 years ago. So, it was always something that was possible. And then, as things move forward, it very much became a point in time. So all of those dead... Well, not all of them. A lot of those dead special characters were removed over time. And you got new special characters who were moving the plot forward. 6th edition did that a lot. And then you did that right up to the end. So over the course of Warhammer's life, it went from it kind of didn't matter when you played to you're playing... The default was that you were playing at a particular point in time. And then obviously end times is literally that. So... That is an interesting point. Yeah, it's not important. It's not important. You can play whenever you want, and there's loads of battle reports in White Dwarf and loads of classic games and all sorts. All of the many of the scenario packs for 4th, 5th edition, they are set at specific points in time. So, yeah, you're right. The time frame was never really that important. It got more important as the game continued, I think. And because of its importance by the end and the end times, very much anchoring it into a setting and a story, that then has created the sort of, I suppose, the space for you to then go, okay, well, let's move 200 years earlier and do something specifically as a prequel, 200 years before that. I mean, it's interesting because there's obviously a lot of, necessity has driven a lot of the decisions, I imagine, or the feeling of necessity. How can you make everything canon? But I still think, even now, if you want to play the old world and set it in the Storm of Chaos, absolutely you can. If you want to play the old world rules and set it in the end times, easily done. Because ultimately the time frame isn't as significant as the official books. It's significant for the story and the setting that's officially told, but once it's in your hands, you can explore it in many ways, I think. Jake, you're responding to a question from Thomas. I wonder if the Black Library is missing an opportunity by not publishing a series of novels for Warhammer: The Old World. And Jake, you mentioned the Lords of the Lance novel and the mixed opinions. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good question. Oh, and Thomas, you actually read it and thought it was okay. I similarly thought it was okay. I enjoyed it well enough. I think it's interesting. It's interesting because it feels to me like that's very much built for that almost launch box, which doesn't exist, of Tomb Kings versus Bretonnians. And obviously you get the two army launch boxes, but there's no sort of core box that story relates to, which I find very interesting. As a sort of compelling narrative, I thought it was perfectly fine, and it sort of did a good job of kind of getting you back into the old world and kind of taking you on a journey in a slightly different time period. So I've got no trouble with the old world. With the Lords of the Lance. I would love to see them progress a story. And I think I've kind of been... I don't know if I'm in the minority on this, because there's obviously that tension. We've talked about it on the channel. It comes up a lot in the Warhammer histories. The tension between setting and story. Is Warhammer a setting where it's a sandbox? They give you all of the tools for you to tell your own stories through your games. Or is it a story where your games take part in an ongoing narrative? And they sort of straddle the two a lot, more now than ever before. But the Storm of Chaos, which I love, is kind of maybe the biggest inflection point in that, where they kind of moved from one to the other. Not fully, but they kind of took some of those big steps where they were like, okay, we're going to tell a story, and the games that are played contribute to that story. And this would then be borne out in the end times, where it doesn't matter what happens in your game, this is the story that takes place. And for better or for worse, there's still plenty of space for your corner of that story to exist. But with the scale of the stories that are told now, galaxies under threat, planets being destroyed, your battle can't change the ultimate fate, I suppose, which is interesting, I think. It kind of puts things into an interesting spot. So yeah, you've definitely, it still straddles the line. I always think it's very interesting when they say for the RPGs, for like the 40k RPGs, they create like a corner of the galaxy that becomes the sandbox for your storytelling, for all of the RPG adventures to take place. And Star Trek Adventures did something similar. They were like, okay, we're going to create a space called the Shackleton Expanse, and that kind of has no official storytelling in it. So all of the stories that take place in the RPG could take place there. Now, obviously, you can go off and have your characters meet Kirk and work with Picard, or open a shop on Deep Space Nine. But if you want to tell like big scale stories and you don't want to affect the canon, you can do it in the Shackleton Expanse. And that's exactly what they did for a lot of the 40k RPGs. Not as easy to do that for Warhammer Fantasy, of course. But you've got it in a way, right, with like the old world, where it's this other period of time with not as much lore. So there's not as much canon to contradict. Sure, there's some stuff, but you can kind of flex a lot more, I suppose. So yeah, it's interesting. Nick, I may have missed you, but see you later, mate. Thank you for coming along. And that one guy, thank you. Yeah, I'm not gonna rush it. I mean, I evidently haven't rushed the 8th edition video, but I will get it finished. It is an important one for me to do. But yeah, it's just, as ever, these things always take a lot longer than one expects. Yeah, I mean, some discussion there. I mean, stuff you're saying that exactly it's a setting for us all to tell stories. Jake, I think Warhammer was a setting for a while, but now it's moved to being more of a story, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think, and the same for 40k. And damn, you're saying it's a sandbox for you and your friends to create a story. Adam, I much prefer Warhammer as a setting. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people probably do prefer it as a setting because you want your games to matter, and your games are always going to contradict something in the sort of official canon, especially if you play with special characters. But yeah, I think there's definitely space for me. I like a big overarching narrative. I like a meta narrative, but one that's artfully crafted to allow for everybody's stories to exist within it. That's what I like the most. So yeah, I think how, in an ideal world, a storm of chaos that is okay. This thing is happening, but your stories can all still totally exist and don't contradict it, and they can take place where they need to. Like, I'm a fan of that, and I think there is a way to do it where everybody wins, but it's very hard. Blind, when have Tomb King's armies ever been in the old world? Never. So yeah, I mean, this is a fair point. I think that the retcon for that is that they've attacked Bretonia, I think. I don't know if it's a retcon. There might be some traditional lore. But yeah, I mean, I think there's always been the option for Tomb Kings to be about in the old world and having some battles in the old world, because you could always fight anybody versus anybody and do it anywhere. So you could have Tomb Kings in Lustria fighting against Bretonians and Lizardmen if you were playing a 3-player game. I guess it's just one of those. It's one of those things. That's why it's always a challenge, isn't it? Because you want to have all of that opportunity to just do whatever you want. I did miss your question. Let me go back and take a look. A tangent. How do you feel about Tau using FB minis? What do you mean by What do you mean by FB? I may have forgotten. Tyrion, hello. Come in and know me better. Jake, with the rate in which the Primarchs are returning to 40k, its plot is definitely moving forward, if not a little too fast, I feel. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with the Primarchs is that they're very easy... Oh, Fantasy Battle, okay. A very easy, like, big... Not twist, but like a big tentpole moment. So it kind of is one of these things of, yeah, okay, we're going to bring back another Primarch now. And you're going to run out of those. And what happens when they are all back? I mean, I assume there is some plan. But like when you've got all of your Primarchs back, like what do they do then? Yeah. So yes, how do you feel about the old world using fantasy battle miniatures, despite that probably being historically inaccurate? Because IRL history would mean vastly different military equipment and aesthetics. It enables me as a historian and a world builder. Yeah, I think so. I went through the pain on this one early on because I get what you mean. Like even fashion doesn't stay the same for 200 years, and like technological advances and all of this kind of stuff, especially in a world of magic and wonder. It's a very good point. I think for me, it was just one of these things that I just had to let go. And there's plenty of those, and it's not just within Warhammer or GW stuff. There's loads of game worlds, there's loads of stories and movies and TV shows where I've just had to go, you know what? I would prefer this, but they're not doing it, and I still want to enjoy the thing, so I'm just going to have to allow myself to just let it go. And it's probably not a very helpful answer. But yeah, ultimately, there's plenty of things I still do get hung up on when it comes to like fiction and worlds that I love and that I really want to be a certain thing. But as much as possible, I try and just go, okay, there's a business reality here or a creative decision that isn't my choice, but I can't change it. All I can do, I can either embrace it and sort of crack on, or ignore it and crack on, or walk away. So that's kind of where I've ended up with those kinds of things. I totally get it. But yeah, I still want to be able to enjoy the old world. So in order to do that, I've just sort of made my peace, I suppose. Oh, Gary. Hello. Good to have you in. Oh, I'm very pleased you could make it. Thanks, Gary. Damn. I highly recommend anyone interested to check out Mountain Miniatures. Although it's Canada time based on Wednesday and Thursday nights, is where I get to play in Canada. Okay. Is it like a store? Or something else? Stuff. I think the limitation of Warhammer Fantasy as a world has always seemed like a great pressure on storytelling. Your stories must be of a limited scale. I think overarching narratives work for that. And then Blind... Warhammer is much better as a setting because the battles can happen at any time in history. Yeah, I mean, I think you're both right, and I think, like, I genuinely, if I get together with my friends or anybody who wants to play, and someone's like, well, you know, can we set it here so that I can have Azag the Slaughterer in this game, or can we do this, or you know, what if we were going to tell the story of the secession of Marienburg? And we want to play a game then. That's awesome. I'm more than happy to do that. I think that's amazing. Absolutely up for that kind of stuff. So I do think being able to tell whatever stories you want within the game is fantastic. And absolutely. I don't think an overarching narrative prevents that. If that narrative is told through, you know, these sort of meta supplements and stuff like that, it kind of becomes like an interesting way to introduce new stuff, to sort of continue the plot. You know, if you think about it in terms of like, so live service games, and maybe this isn't the best way for things to go, but live service games often have, like, they have a gameplay loop that stays exactly the same, but they will also have DLC that is released that ostensibly tells a story and moves the narrative forward. Now, it doesn't actually move the narrative forward, because then you would have to remove loads of stuff. I mean, eventually you might remove old DLC, as Destiny has done, but largely you're just sort of continuing to move stuff forward through the release of these new things. But the game that you're playing remains mostly the same. It might just, you know, you get new like themes and feelings and flavors and stuff. And I quite like that, and I think that can be really good. And there's an interesting space, I think. Now, the Arcane Journal sort of moving things forward, telling bits of new story with specific factions. If they continue doing new Arcane Journal releases that focus on different cities in the Empire or factions of different forces, and kind of say, right, this is what these guys are doing, slightly different to what those other guys were doing in the previous Arcane Journal, doesn't invalidate the other one, but it kind of moves a bit of narrative in this one corner forward. That kind of thing can be really fun, I think. Talisman Tavern, hello. Good to have you in. Sword. It's very difficult to balance the setting and story aspects, I think. I agree, and I think, you know, everyone's going to have their own preference for what that balance is. So you're never gonna please everybody, and at the end of the day, I think all of the other editions still exist. All of the previous stories still exist. Folks who love the End Times could still be playing End Times games. If you love the Storm of Chaos, you can still play those. If you just love 4th edition, a bit of everything, you can still go off and play that. With those rules or with the old world rules, like, it's all still available. I'm just very happy that you can still go into a store and get Warhammer Fantasy miniatures again. Like, that's great. I just really like that. I just think that's really fun. And damn, yeah, Cathay is a really interesting one, right? Because they're inserting Cathay into the narrative, right? Now, and that in a way that didn't exist before. Could you wrap all of that up at the end of the old world and be like, and then all of the Cathayans left the old world, and so that there's no evidence of Cathay's involvement 200 years later? Absolutely, you could. They could completely do that. Just as easily, they could be like, oh no, there were Cathayans here the whole time. You know, there's trading posts and there's armies and there's mercenaries. They've always been here. They were always there. They fought in the End Times in the old world. And so on, like, because the narrative is flexible, is malleable. They can change it a lot, but we can still choose which bits of it we want to play with, which I think is great. So that's why I like a stories, because I can then engage with it on my terms. Adam, there are lizardmen to the south of Kemri, so the Tomb Kings don't have to go to Lustria to fight them. I mean, that's fair. Yeah, that's a fair point. Nick, does anyone know which pen and paper RPG the old Amiga game Realms of Arcania was based on? Think it might have been a German game? I don't know, Nick. Off the top of my head, I do not know, mate. Blind Lobster, your earlier interview with the Wolfrup 2nd Edition creator was great. Would that have been the Chris Pramis interview, who worked on Wolfrup 2nd Edition at Green Ronin? I think Chris is a fantastic creator. Lots of really interesting insight. And I think 2nd Edition of Wolfrup is a bit of a hidden gem, actually. I think there's some really, really fun stuff in 2nd Edition. Oh, wow, Nick, someone's answered your question. Well done. Bri, that's great. That sword. That's fantastic. That's great community work. Good stuff. It's just my inner Peritonic stuff. I love the static tech and fashion of Fantasy World. It also draws on some historical precedent. See Gormenghast, China, Egypt links. It creates a sense of baroque, sluggish, deep age. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair shout. Yeah, if the idea that things haven't changed because they don't need to, the fashions have stayed the same for 200 years because the people in power, the fashionable, have seen no need to change. I mean, that's quite an interesting point, to be fair. On Gary, so when are you going to run RPG Warhammer game I can play in? I mean, that sounds fun. That sounds very fun. Yeah, I've not even thought about it. So, you know, at some point, man. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. Part of me, you know, I wonder if you could do just like a big open game session and just like run a live stream where it is. You basically, I mean, would that be? That wouldn't work, would it? If you just had a GM running a live stream, everybody in chat is in the world. No, it's impossible, right? It's impossible. Actually, I don't know. But part of me was just thinking that would be really fun. If there were a way to do that, but it would just be. It would be wild, right? Yeah, stuff, absolute chaos, right? Because everybody would just be in chat, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm doing this. I mean, maybe you could do, like, if you were doing, like, the Siege of Prague, and you were just, okay, here is the setup. Everybody, what are you doing? And, like, collectively, everybody has to agree what the city is doing. I mean, that could you do it on that sort of scale? Like, it's this, like, to collectively chat. You're not running individual characters. You are collectively role-playing a city or an army, right? Like, you could create like a. Oh, I think there's that. I mean, listen, this is a flight of fancy. It is completely unworkable, but I do have to think about this now. I'm going to have to go off and have a little think about that, because that sounds fun. Dan, hello. Glad to have you here again, mate. I don't like live service games. It's led to games being accused of dead if they don't release content week on week. That is a very fair point. And yeah, I mean, I think we see that with tabletop games as well, right? But like the suggestion that a game is dead because there isn't something new for it. There's been no release this week, so it is dead. So yeah, I think that there's definitely that's a fair challenge. There's a lot of negative and predatory sort of capitalist elements of like how live service games monetize and what they do and the sort of culture around them. But I do also think that sort of progressive storytelling thing I was talking about can be a lot of fun also. Sword, maybe the old world is actually a branching timeline. I mean, it's entirely possible, right? There is. I mean, I think officially, as far as Games Workshop are concerned, it is not, and I think we've seen that pretty. You know, I think they've said in Warhammer community that it is the one true timeline. But like when in Giant Slayer, Gotrek and Felix see multiple timelines, so it's like within the canon. If you consider the library novels canon, that there are alternate pathways for different things to play out. And I think the Storm of Chaos and the End Times also set an interesting precedent for the Warhammer world. So there's definitely something fun that you could explore there and kind of say, oh, you know, I think it's going to come down to individuals, right? If you want it to be a branching timeline, then it can be. Nick, what is my favourite Woofrup adventure or scenario from any edition? Well, I probably am not best placed to answer it, because I suspect that some element of the enemy within is probably gonna. So I've read a lot of the enemy within, but I've never played it, and I think, like, I feel like I really want to play it, and I think I'd love to know if it lives up to the perception of it and what I've read of it, because it feels like it would be fantastic, but it also feels like a lot of work. So I'm kind of like I feel like it would be a winner. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the sort of lesser adventures. It's a very good question. I think I need to have a little think. I like Rough Nights. I think is very, very fun. Which is probably what I would say for now. But I'm going to have a little think about it and see if there's anything else that pops up in my mind. Jake, Cathay being a playable faction in Total War Warhammer 3 and having an army in the old world opens the door for so many other things to be explored. I mean, it absolutely does. And we know there's other corners of the Warhammer world that haven't been explored. So, do you used to play Warframe 2nd Edition? I mean, yeah, I'd love to get it back to the table. Would be interesting to see how Cathay show up in AOS when they get around to it. That's an interesting thought. That is a very interesting thought, Jake. That's actually, you know what? That is such an interesting thought experiment. And I think this is one of those interesting things with, like, because Cathay's importance in the old world is now going to be so much more. Like, assuming they release and are successful. Like, if the old world continues as a game system for 10 years and Cathay get loads more stuff, and Cathay, if they were like the most popular faction, that will obviously reshape the perception of the Warhammer fantasy world. If Cathay become a successful, popular faction on the tabletop with big sales, you will have to reshape some element of how the old world is sort of skewed around. The lack of Cathay representation in historical Warhammer fantasy, that's going to change in the old world. And then once it changes in the old world, in this hypothetical, what do you then do? Like, how do you then move things forward after that? So I think that's really interesting. That's actually really interesting. And could you then place them into the AOS world as well? I mean, you absolutely could, right? You could just have heroes turn up as Stormcast. You could have, like, the dragons reincarnated. You could do things like that. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. And Gary, a live stream of a role-playing game. Maybe one of these days. Yeah, I won't commit to it though, Gary, because I can't, because time is short at the moment. But I like the idea. I do. Dave, we could do that. We could do that many players live stream RPG with participants joining like an old style hangout, a tier system. And Adam, you're suggesting to watch the Dark Room on Twitch. So I've not yet. I'm obviously familiar with the Dark Room because they do a lot of live stuff. This is John. Oh, I forget the surname. But they do a lot of live stuff at UK Games Expo and other events. But I haven't actually watched the Dark Room. I didn't know they were actually on Twitch. That's interesting. So what do they do? How does he handle it on that, Adam? Stuff. Back in the early days of World of Warcraft, I ran an RP guild. I wonder if it might work like that. Lots of folk at it at once. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a fun idea to explore. Just purely hypothetical, I think. Blind, I suppose we do a campaign about Magnus the Pious. His war was at Prague, I think. Yeah, I mean, couldn't that be cool? Quite cool? And Talisman, it sounds Ace collective city dwelling RPG. We could definitely set up a shop or have a guild, kind of like Blaze in the Dark. Yeah, I mean, I think there's something fun in there, right? Adam, the one true timeline that's just different from the other one true timeline. Jake, I think that's the eventual end game for the old world tabletop game narrative. I mean, technically. So Jake, you're responding to Blind, the war at Prague, right? I think that's very possible. As Stuff says, we know that the Warhammer world intersects with the 40k universe. That universe has pocket universes. My headcanon has always accounted for the end times as existing in a pocket universe in a vortex. AOS universe is Kalidor's spell. The only way to defeat chaos was to give it a pocket universe in which it was victorious. That's why it drains chaos and why AOS mirrors the winds of magic. I love that theory. I mean, I think it's very, very fun. Do I think it would ever be an official theory? No, not at all. But it is a really cool idea. And it does explain, you could use it to explain a lot in a really interesting way. Yeah, I mean, that is really interesting. And yeah, just exploring it in the sense of, the pride of chaos. like the way to keep chaos mostly occupied, or at least to funnel so much chaotic energy into one place, is for chaos to be convinced it won, and that's just draining off chaos. I mean, I think that's very, very cool. It's very, very cool. I like it. Adam, everyone just shouts out the option they want to pursue, and the loudest wins. Okay, this is the dark room. So how does he do that on chat? Is it just like whatever gets the most sort of votes in the chat then? I think that could be cool. Richard, hello. Come in and know me better. Gary, if anyone could run an online RPG, you could do it. Would love to be able to contribute in some way. I'd have to be a wood elf. I'd love it. I think that'd be fun. Stuff. Wait until Old World outsells AOS, then it is official. I mean, you know, I love the Warhammer world. I love the Warhammer Fantasy world. I've had fun playing AOS, but I don't love it in the same way. I would be very surprised if it's going anywhere anytime soon. I think there's lots of plans and lots of stuff for AOS, and some cool stuff. You know, I won't deny that for sure. It's not my preferred flavour of Warhammer, but I certainly don't hate it. So I think, you know, they can all live in parallel, to my mind. But it's going to be an interesting ride to see where things go. I think that's definitely true. Adam. Yeah, the option that he sees most of wins. If it isn't like that for the live show at all. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, I think you could do, right? You are... So, the GM, me, on the live stream, basically sets up the situation. You are the city of Middenheim. You know, we do a Storm of Chaos example. You're the city of Middenheim, the defenders of Middenheim. Chaotic forces have arrived. They are sieging the city. Do you want to sally out and face them on the field of battle below Middenheim? And then everybody gets to vote. And if it's yes, then we're like, okay, well, this is what happens next. If it's no, this is what happens next. And we literally just do it through like voting in the chat. People just saying, yeah, I want to do this. And then people could suggest like cool stuff. Or it might be like, oh, yeah, well, we want to ring the bells as well. And we want to alert people, or we want the wizards to cast this kind of spell to sort of prepare the defense. Like that could be kind of good. So you've got the voting element, and then the sort of collaborative storytelling element in the chat, where people are throwing out cool ideas of things that are happening or what might be the case, and then anything that I bring out of the chat then is sort of canonized in the story that we're telling together. That sounds like that could be really, really fun. Oh, I like the idea of this. Oh, I'm going to have to give some thought to this. I think the only way it would work would be sort of positioning it ahead of time and being really clear up top and kind of just being like, right, this is a live playthrough RPG, and then I'd have to just keep updating people and sort of explaining what's going on, right? Oh man, I actually tell me in the chat. Does this appeal at all? Is that an interesting kind of idea? Just as a little test, one live stream at some point in the future, if it was positioned as, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to do a 2-hour session of a live RPG game where the chat collectively make the decisions for the defense of a city, or a questing group or something like that. Because that's interesting. We could literally just do it as like this kind of like collaborative storytelling idea. Oh, I like it. I quite like it. Okay, I mean, I think there's a few folks here that like the idea of this. Maybe I'll take a look at the old diary and see if there is a live stream in the future where we could try it. And then maybe I'll put some thoughts down on paper of what a little story might be, at least the starting point. But then I think it would need to be, you know, you keep it really like loose and just play through it and kind of see how it goes. Oh yeah, okay, I'm inspired. I'm going to take that away and I'm going to think about it. Yeah. Anvil, hello. No worries. I was saying at the very start of the stream, I'm still in recovery mode from UK Games Expo. I also forgot to do much publicizing the live stream, reminding people it was happening, and I've not posted about it pretty much anywhere. So it's on me as much as anybody else. Yeah. Stuff. They literally live in parallel in my headcanon. I don't know what specifically you're talking about, but if you mean like the sort of the parallel timelines, that's kind of how I approach it. So I kind of go with like they're they're all true, they're all happening. The ones I prefer, the ones I don't prefer, and I just spend my time in the parallel universe that is the most interesting to me. Blind, it seems like it will be difficult / hell for you to try ... So you don't say that you're not up for it. Cheers, Anvil. Stuff. AOS and Warhammer. Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, no, okay. Well, this is very cool. I think there's something in this. We'll try it, and I think you do it on a big grand scale. So it's like a whole city or a whole army. You could literally do it as an army progressing in a campaign, and like, instead of having a character sheet, you've got an army sheet that's kind of your full roster, and then decisions that are being made by the chat that are like beneficial or less. Like it's okay. You can take the easy route down through the valley, but you're more likely to be ambushed, or you could take the higher land, like the higher ground. You're less likely to be ambushed, but you might lose some people because of the tricky terrain. Which one do you want to do? And then obviously the chat decides, and then based on those decisions, there'll be some dice rolling that I could do here that might affect. You've got higher odds of losing folks if you go up top, or you've got a higher chance of being ambushed, and stuff like that. So you're constantly like ticking down on certain units in the army, and then the idea is there's narrative that we start to grow out of. Well, like what's the name of the general? Folks in the chat, what's the name of the general? Let's get a good name, and people could vote on it and stuff like that. I'm excited to try something of this. I think this could be quite interesting. Yeah. That's quite cool. I need to think about how like a little system for how it could work, and what kind of story we would tell, and then I'm going to put that together. Stuff. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your contributions. It's been great. And the big group game, I will publicize that one, and I would definitely make sure that I would put that out there. Damn, we should really be orcs for this campaign. Yeah, I mean, you could do it as orcs, because then that's why it's a rabble and everyone's got different opinions. Anvil, I only heard the last bit of the chat RP idea, but it sounds worth a try. I'll put some thought into how decision-making voting would work. Yeah, I will do. I think there's something in there. Talisman Tavern, if you do Kingdom, then you can be an NPC rather than GM, so you can get involved without doing all the GM type work. Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, Gary, I think it's cool. I think it's a good idea. Lonely. In my canon, end times never happen, both in world and meta terms, the real world too. AOS is fine to be enjoyed, some great models, but end times is just a void in my memory banks. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, I'm excited about this. So, because I'm going to have to wrap up relatively soon, folks. I think it's been very fun. Any other thoughts about UK Games Expo? Any other questions about the event? I'm conscious that I sort of started talking about it and then trailed off into a number of other things over the course of the chat. But yeah, any other questions on that front before we wrap up? I think my summary is that I really enjoyed it and I'm looking forward to going again. I think my lessons learned. And actually, I've got a comment about that I need to reply to on my video. And very friendly chap I bumped into on the way in just said, "You've got to pace yourself," and it was very good advice. So I did pace myself over the weekend. The speed at which the weekend passed was just absolutely wild. And I think it was just... So I think it was right. I took a bottle of water. I made sure I took regular breaks. I think all of that was really good. So I think that's definitely something. I think my learning for next time at UK Games Expo is going to be to almost plan better. So I had a sort of mental list of, I need to check this, I want to check that. I think I did good work on the Friday, just scoping out the entire place, but I kind of forgot where everything was and forgot everybody I wanted to see in more detail. I think what I would do next year was on the Friday, just make sure that I get, almost build a list so that I know where I'm going each day. Just a couple, just like 2 or 3 things that I definitely need to do each day and spread it out. And then the other thing that I would definitely try and do would be book into a specific game. So I think the games start on the Thursday night. And I think I would use that to get myself into a role-playing game and just do some classic role-playing. Because I kind of missed out on that this time, and I think that I would like to do more of that. Gary, question on Expo. Did you wear the best shoes? I wore my best shoes, my walking shoes. I think it was wise. Still ended up... it was really strange, because on the Friday night and the Saturday night, my feet were just, buzzing. They were, pulsing, because they were just been on my feet all day. And I really thought the Sunday was going to be hell. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm barely going to be able to walk. And then I woke up on the Sunday absolutely fine. It was so strange. Because I probably woke up feeling worse on the Saturday morning than I did on the Sunday. So I felt very lucky. I don't know if it was a magic sleep I had or just whatever it was. But yeah, the Sunday I was fine and I was very pleased about it. Dan, how much bigger did it feel this year when compared to last? So I think it felt significantly bigger. I don't think it literally was significantly bigger. I think it was maybe 20% or something like that. I can't remember the figures, but they had more floor space. I think they used the floor space that they had better this year. So the layout just felt much easier and more accessible, easier to navigate. And it also allowed people to spread out a bit more. I think that's also why it was easier to miss people, because there was just more space to spread out in. So it did feel bigger, but I also think it didn't feel overwhelming in the way it had the last year. It accommodated the larger size really well. So I think a big tick, big success on that. Damn, I'm going to visit my old university campus by watching Full Metal Jacket after this stream. Wow. Goodness. Oh, Martha's shouting at me for some reason. Oh, there she comes. She's obviously got something to say. I was going to say I'm going to probably cool down before bed. I'm going to be watching the end of the Marvels, the Marvel movie, the Marvels. I started watching it earlier, so I'm watching it in 2 parts. But yeah, I'll probably finish that off. That's probably my plan for later on. I've got a little bit of admin to do for the channel as well, so I'll do some of that. Have a little gentle Sunday evening. Adam, what I used to do during the week leading up to the expo was to print out and laminate the maps and circle every stall I wanted to visit. My back went out on Saturday night. I felt okay on Sunday morning though. Gosh, that's the tale of 2 halves in a way. One super prep and very good stuff, and the other one rough stuff. But I'm glad to hear it was okay. Blind, you sound both British and a bit Australian. Are you British? Heaven help us if you are French. I am British. Yeah. No one's ever suggested that I had a bit of Australian. but you know, that's very cool. I do listen to a lot of the Weekly Planet, Mr. Sunday Movies podcasts. I think that they're great. I think they're a sort of almost the gold standard for like a chat podcast. They do a lot of really fun. It's film based, but they just do a really, really fun podcast that where the two of them have got such a great dynamic. Really, really nice. It's kind of what my friend Rob and I were hoping to achieve to some small degree with the GW Film Club when we started that. But like, yeah, definitely, you know, I'm not going to say we got anywhere near that, but because we similarly, like they do, have a long-term friendship, it meant the dynamic is a bit more back and forth. Actually, I should mention that we're going to be doing a new season of the GW Film Club, but it's going to have a new format. So still working out the kinks, but the format, the plan is for me to be joined by a guest every episode, and I will bring a movie that is relevant to GW history, and they will bring a movie that is relevant to their history with the hobby. And then we'll watch and talk about both films. And I'm hoping those guests will be from across the wider sort of content creator community, is the plan. So we'll see if it all comes together. I'm very excited, very hopeful. So yeah, it should be good. I'm looking forward to it if we can get it all together. Gotta say, Jordan, this BGM has me thinking I'm idling whilst in a... Oh, did I leave the background music on? It's not been too loud, has it? You know, I didn't even think the background music was still on. Forgive me. Hopefully it's been okay. Hopefully it's all right. Anvil, I don't know, man. I think you could really work with a Jordan Sorcery without an outrageously thick French accent. I mean, Jordan Sorcerer. I think we'd be in something like that, right? Damn, it was the old gasworks that was actually blown up in the making of the film. Kubrick was brilliant, and he is technically British, but it's in the Midlands, which is why he sounds odd instead of London. Fair enough. Oh, that's very cool. That is very cool. Yeah, I mean, Kubrick, incredible. I watched some Kubrick stuff again recently, and he is just, you know, understandable. It's entirely understandable why he's one of the best. Incredible filmmaker. Right. I think, folks, I've got a lot to think about with this kind of big RPG idea. I'm going to go off and have a little think about that. In the more pressing future, I mentioned it before, but just to remind folks, we're going to be doing a live stream on the 22nd, Sunday 22nd, 6:30, and that's going to be, I'm going to be joined by Anthony Johnston, and we're going to be talking about his latest game book, which is like a cozy crime novel that is also a game book, and we're going to be playing through some of that. So that's really cool. There may, I know there's no guarantees of this, but there may be a live stream next week as well, or the week after, where I'll be joined by John Green, and we'll be playing through some of his new Arkham Horror game book as well. So I'm really excited about both of those. Just a really fun game book centric live streams coming up. I think they could be really terrific. So hopefully folks will be able to join me for those. And yeah, there'll be plenty of stuff on the channel, on the Patreon, and there'll be more live streams in the future. So thank you so much for everybody who has joined me and joined me in the chat. It's been terrific, great fun to chat. I really enjoy these, so thank you so much for making them such an enjoyable experience. Martha's obviously got something to say. I'm not sure what she's up to. But until next time, folks, I will see you later. Thanks, guys. Bye.